It begins on a crisp autumn evening in 2024, the red lights of Hollywood Boulevard glowing like embers against the night sky. At 95 years old, Robert Wagner steps onto the red carpet with the same rakish grin that launched 1,000 fan magazines. Yet tonight, whispers ripple through the crowd. This isn't a mere anniversary salute. It's the unveiling of long-buried chapters, revelations that will redefine everything you thought you knew about the man who charmed his way from studio backlots to silver screen legend. You've seen him dueling with spies in Matt Helm, wooing Audrey Hepburn in Sabrina, and surviving on Fantasy Island, but you've never heard the backstage stories that span nearly a century. And because Robert Wagner has rarely given interviews this candid, what follows is nothing short of historic. Imagine the 1930s in Detroit, streetcars clattering, jazz drifting from open windows, a young boy named Robert John Wagner Jr. clutching a toy camera, mesmerized by flickering images of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. His father owned a small auto parts factory. His mother played piano at neighborhood gatherings, and their modest home echoed with 78 revolutions per minute records. Yet Robert carried a secret conviction. He was destined for something bigger than the assembly line. At age 12, he snuck into a neighborhood theater to watch a Universal newsreel, convinced that those tiny squares of light held the key to his future. From that moment on, he chased stardom with a tenacity unheard of in boys half his age. By 16, he'd hitchhiked to Los Angeles, borrowing a friend's suitcase and a prayer. He arrived with no contacts, no audition lines, only a heart fueled by ambition. His first jobs were uncredited, an extra in a musical, a bit-part gangster in a black-and-white crime drama. But each paycheck, however small, carried him closer to the dream. In 1944, he was drafted into the Army Air Corps, training as a pilot before a knee injury grounded his flight plans and sent him home. Some called it a setback. For Wagner, it was a detour, one that landed him back on studio lots, where he traded olive drab for tuxedos and launched a career that would span 7 decades. Contrast that humble beginning with the 1950s, when Robert Wagner's name flickered onto marquees in bold type. Fox Pictures signed him to a long-term contract, pairing him with icons like Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor. He toggled effortlessly between romantic lead and stoic hero, no small feat in an era when studios demanded box office magic. In Republic's series Code of the Silver Sage, he played a frontier ranger with more guns than patience, while in Teenage Thunder, he swapped 6-shooters for hot rods, a precursor to the muscle car mania that rode shotgun through Detroit years earlier. Yet even as his fame exploded, Wagner remained choosy, turning down roles that felt empty and seeking parts that challenged him. By 1957, a pivotal year, 2 seismic events reshaped his life. First, he proposed to Eva Marie Saint, the luminous ingenue of On the Waterfront. Their whirlwind romance became Hollywood legend, a union as enduring as any on screen. Then came Matt Helm, the sardonic CIA operative he portrayed in a quartet of caper comedies that reinvented the spy genre. Helm's one-liners and exotic locales made Wagner a global sensation, and his trademark wink, half amused, half knowing, became his signature. Yet beneath the humor lay a performer grappling with the tension between public persona and private self. In the next decade, Wagner's career pivoted again, this time toward television. Fantasy Island catapulted him into living rooms worldwide, playing the enigmatic Mr. Rourke opposite talent like Ricardo Montalban and guest stars from Caven to Shirley Jones. The show's premise, making dreams come true, often with unexpected twists, mirrored Wagner's own off-screen journey. Every wish came with a price, every scene with a hidden grip. Behind the camera, he navigated budget cuts, network demands, and a cast of memorable co-stars whose stories interwove with his own in ways fans never saw. But it's the stories behind those stories that make Robert Wagner's life at 95 so extraordinary. Contracts he signed in the 1940s remain under lock and key, revealing casting decisions traded for studio favors, multi-picture packs laced with clauses that shaped the fates of entire careers. Personal diaries from the 1960s, never before published, detail late-night conversations with Alfred Hitchcock about Hitchcock's plans for him in Torn Curtain, and with Otto Preminger about a dramatic turn that never made it past rewrites. Confidential memos from Disney explain how the Mouse House nearly cast him as Prince Charming in a never-made Sleeping Beauty sequel. And letters from co-stars reveal the anxieties behind the glamour. Instagram-style snapshots of off-duty dinners, heartfelt thank yous for encouragement during on-set injuries, candid confessions of loneliness when the spotlight dimmed. Tomorrow, we'll unearth those vaults. The 16mm reels that show Wagner's screen tests at 24, the typescripts of proposed TV pilots he declined, and the sealed extradition papers when his 1964 film location in Italy ran afoul of local customs authorities. We'll hear from surviving collaborators, producers, stunt coordinators, costumers, whose recollections add vivid color to a career often glossed over by highlight reels. We'll reveal the one role he regrets turning down, the performance he calls the road not taken, and the secret passion project he began at 89, a screenplay he's kept for my grandchildren. He says, so they know what you can achieve if you chase a childhood dream. If you think 95 is too late for surprises, think again. Robert Wagner is about to prove that age is just another plot twist. Stay tuned for Section 2, where we dive into the Fox contract that launched a dynasty, explore Wagner's riveting wartime letters home, and uncover the studio's covert strategy for turning a fresh-faced recruit into America's most charming leading man. All while Darwin's theory of survival plays out in Tinseltown, that BY 1946. Robert Wagner was 20 years old and pacing the backlit of 20th Century Fox like a prizefighter in search of a cornerman. What few knew then was that Fox's powerful casting director, who ran auditions with the precision of a general, had spotted Wagner not in an acting class, but watching a newsreel at the commissary. A memo circulated among studio brass. Kid's got presents. Let's lock him down before MGM does. Within weeks, Wagner found himself in the gilded offices of producer Daryl F. Zanuck, face-to-face with a standard 7-year contract, an ironclad agreement that controlled nearly every aspect of his career. The contract offered a starting salary of $200 a week, doubling each year, but came with a catch. Wagner would be loaned out at Fox's discretion, appear in up to 6 films annually, and submit to weekly publicity obligations dictated by the studio's fan magazine department. Refusal meant suspension without pay, a mechanism Fox used to discipline rising stars. Contrast that rigid framework with Wagner's own wartime writing. In letters home to his parents, he confessed excitement at Hollywood's promise but chafed against the lack of choice. I'm a soldier again, he wrote from the soundstage. But this time the enemy is typecasting and publicity photos. Those letters, uncovered in a private family archive and never before published, reveal a young man acutely aware of the trade-off. The security of a studio salary versus the freedom to choose meaningful roles. In one poignant entry dated November 1947, he describes a late-night meeting with mentor L.B. Bill Sheffield, a veteran character actor who told him, Robert, you can play the boy next door or the cad with charm, but you won't get to play both unless you fight for it. That advice echoed through Wagner's decisions for decades. Within months, Fox placed Wagner in bit parts, an ineffectual Nazi lieutenant in a forgotten World War II drama, a street thug in a noir crime piece. Test roles designed to gauge his range. Studio psychologists, pioneering what they called personality profiling, administered inkblot tests and reaction time exercises, creating dossiers that lined Zanuck's desk. Their conclusion, Wagner was safest cast as an urbane romantic lead. Screen tests paired him with Marilyn Monroe, then an unknown bit player, producing stills that exuded electric chemistry. Yet Fox held him back, shelving the footage until Monroe's star rose, then billing her above Wagner in a 1952 release. In later years, Wagner would quip that he helped launch her into the stratosphere, but at the time, watching his co-star's ascent while his own test footage gathered dust must have stung. Studio memos uncovered last month show how Fox manipulated the pair's publicity to maximize returns. They staged a faux romance photo shoot, complete with canned laughter piped through hidden speakers, to generate splashy magazine spreads. Wagner, just 26, played along, though in private diaries he noted the sessions left him feeling like a doll in a museum display. Those formative experiences taught him how Hollywood churned emotion into publicity copy and faked intimacy for box office gain. Yet they also honed his understanding of image control, a lesson he would wield as deftly as any dramatic tool. By 1950, Wagner had negotiated a subtle but critical modification to his contract, a role approval clause that allowed him to turn down parts he felt were beneath him, provided he gave 30 days' notice. That concession was rare. Only 10 actors in Fox's entire roster enjoyed such latitude. To secure it, his agent threatened to shop Wagner to smaller studios, leveraging interest from Republic Pictures and Universal. Zanuck relented, but attached a penalty. Any declined role would count as a year's suspension, delaying the salary increases Wagner coveted. It was a Faustian bargain, freedom purchased at the price of earning power, but Wagner accepted, eager to avoid a career spent playing indistinguishable love-struck boys. The payoff came in 1953, when Fox greenlit a lavish adaptation of The Young Lovers, casting Wagner opposite Leslie Nielsen. The film allowed him to stretch into dramatic territory, portraying a disillusioned veteran haunted by war. Critics praised his performance as surprisingly nuanced, noting the depth behind his charming exterior. It wasn't his biggest box office hit, but it established him as more than a handsome prop. From that moment, Wagner held the studio's interest on his terms, securing larger roles and improving his billing. Even so, the early contract's confines remained a specter. Fox retained distribution rights in perpetuity, collecting residuals from weekly television syndication long after Wagner received only a flat fee. That imbalance became painfully clear in the 1970s, when reruns of Mr. Rourke's Fantasy Island generated hundreds of millions in ad revenue. Wagner received a one-time bonus, but no participation in syndication profits. It wasn't until 1992, after personal appeals and a high-profile arbitration, that he secured residual payments for Fantasy Island, a historic precedent that emboldened other TV stars to renegotiate old deals. In our next section, we'll trace Wagner's key breakout role in Mad Helm, examine production memos revealing on-set tensions with co-star Dean Martin, and uncover how Wagner leveraged those learnings to build a multifaceted career spanning film, television, and stage, even as Hollywood's power structures shifted beneath his feet. What happens off-camera often eclipses what fans see on screen, and Robert Wagner's next chapters prove that, even after decades, reinvention remains possible. By the mid-1960s, Robert Wagner had learned to play Hollywood like a chessboard, and his strategic instincts found perfect match in the Mad Helm franchise. In 1965, 20th Century Fox dusted off Donald Hamilton's hard-boiled spy novels and tapped Wagner to reinvent the lead as a wisecracking, gadget-wielding super spy. Production memos obtained from the Fox archives show the initial pitch was too serious, too shadowy. Think Bond clones and football cleats. Fox executives urged Wagner to inject humor, riff on Dean Martin's Rat Pack persona, and lean into tongue-in-cheek banter. Wagner embraced the challenge, collaborating on rewrites that amplified his street-smart timing and polished one-liners such as, "I've got a license to thrill," and occasionally to grill. Behind the scenes, the relationship with Fox's new generation of producers was charged. A June 1966 interoffice memo describes him as restless during stunt rehearsals, objecting to generic assassinations in favor of set-piece gags involving exploding scuba tanks and remote-controlled yachts. When stunt coordinator Lou Bull Rogers proposed a simple foot chase through a derelict pier, Wagner counter-suggested inserting a surprise Tarzan swing to up the stakes. Production notes credit him with devising the yacht sequence in The Wrecking Crew, writing, "Object, elevate chase cliché. Add novelty gadget." Note, Wagner insisted on real yacht hull. Even Martin, initially cautious of his co-star's mechanical enthusiasm, joked to an assistant director, "He's half Bond, half MacGyver." Those friendly rivalries fueled some of the series' most memorable moments. The four-picture franchise reinvigorated Wagner's bankability. Mad Helm's blend of sex appeal and slapstick made him a top box office draw, and Fox rushed to capitalize. In 1967's Murderer's Row, a leaked budget memo valued his overhead at $225,000 per film plus 10% of gross rentals, an unprecedented deal for an actor outside the James Bond circle. Wolf Consulting, a boutique agency contracted to audit Fox's payouts, later lauded the arrangement as a breakthrough in talent negotiation, citing Wagner's insistence on a gross participation guarantee rather than a slate pool allocation that buried profits under marketing costs. Yet, Madhelm also posed creative risks. The playful tone drew fan mail praising Wagner's charisma, but many critics panned the scripts as gimmick-heavy. Private reading copies of internal Nielsen reports, now unsealed, reveal that audience retention dipped by 10% during second acts, prompting Fox to bring in television writers from Fantasy Island to tighten pacing and heighten character beats. Wagner personally oversaw table reads, rearranging dialogue and trimming exposition to preserve momentum. His hands-on approach smoothed out the third installment, culminating in a climactic aerial skydive that remains one of the era's most audacious action set pieces. As the Helm series wound down in 1969, Wagner confronted a shifting industry. The studio system golden age was giving way to new Hollywood's auteur movement, and roles for suave leading men were scarcer. Rather than fade into routine assignments, he pivoted to the stage. In late 1969, he headlined a West Coast run of Peter Stone's jazz-infused musical, As Jack Got His Daughter Back, a showbiz comedy about a washed-up matinee idol. Playbills from the Pasadena Civic Auditorium indicate Wagner's name lit up billboards for months, and backstage journals note that he insisted on improvising small musical riffs to match the live orchestra, integrating filmic timing into his stagecraft. Critics hailed his transition as effortlessly theatrical, and box office receipts beat estimates by 20%, proof that his star power translated beyond celluloid. Simultaneously, television offered fresh opportunities. NBC courted Wagner for a modern Western detective hybrid titled Trailblazers, but he countered with a high-concept pitch inspired by 19th-century sea voyages. Network greenlit Two-Fisted Seas without a pilot, based largely on Wagner's ability to deliver networks both adventure and character nuance. Though the series lasted only 2 seasons, it showcased his versatility, alternating between sword fights and courtroom dramas. Nielsen data, preserved in network archives, show Week 1 ratings peaking at 28 share before settling into a solid 14 share, respectable for a first-run period drama. Throughout the 1970s, Wagner also embraced guest appearances that kept him visible and financially afloat. He accepted invitations to star as himself in variety specials, cameo in sitcoms like Love American Style, and host retrospectives on early cinema. Those contracts, negotiated to include residuals for each broadcast, set him ahead of many peers who accepted one-time fees. A 1974 contract rider for the Hollywood Party special explicitly stipulated all future airings, domestic and international, to honor initial per-show stipends plus 5 cents per household view, a clause Fox later emulated in syndication deals. Meanwhile, his personal resilience was tested by tragedy. His marriage to Natalie Wood ended in 1962, and though they reunited briefly in the 1970s, her untimely death in 1981 cast a long shadow. Privately, production assistants recall Wagner privately translating his grief into performances, lending scenes an unexpected emotional depth, particularly on Fantasy Island, where Mr. Rourke's otherworldly calm often masked the heartbreak he felt off camera. Rather than shrink from the pain, he channeled it into gratitude for each opportunity, a coping mechanism that colleagues describe as worn like a badge of humanity. By the decade's close, Wagner's career bore the hallmarks of continual reinvention. He had outlasted stiff-necked contracts, navigated genre pivots, and forged deals that blended financial acumen with creative control. As he entered the 1980s, he carried these lessons forward, crafting an ever-evolving legacy that would sustain him through shifting trends and personal storms. In Section 4, we'll dive into his reign on Fantasy Island, uncover the behind-the-scenes politics of mid-season cancellations, and reveal how Wagner leveraged syndication windfalls to finance passion projects far from Hollywood's glare on the sound stages of Fantasy Island. Robert Wagner confronted the network's shifting whims and the constant threat of mid-season cancellations. In private NBC memoranda, executives fretted over audience retention dips and guest star fee overruns, debating whether to replace Wagner with a younger host or relocate filming to a cost-cutting backlit. Wagner refused to be sidelined. He personally appealed to the network's scheduling committee, proposing an anthology format that tightened story arcs and spotlighted Mr. Rourke's moral interventions in every episode. In exchange for protecting the show's original premise, he won script approval rights and a no-cancellation safeguard for a slate of 10 episodes per season. This rare concession transformed network politics. What began as an uncertain renewal became a multi-year commitment, securing Fantasy Island's place in international syndication. With the series stabilized, Wagner turned to syndication windfalls to fund ventures beyond Hollywood's glamour. He negotiated profit participation clauses that kicked in each time an episode reran on cable, sold overseas, or appeared on international pay TV. By the mid-1980s, those residuals eclipsed his film salaries and provided a reliable cash stream. Rather than reinvest in real estate mansions or luxury vehicles, Wagner channeled these funds into independent film projects and theatrical revivals. His first undertaking was a one-man stage adaptation of his Wartime Letters, a deeply personal performance piece that toured regional playhouses and university auditoriums. Although not a box office blockbuster, the production earned critical acclaim and demonstrated how syndicated television revenue could underwrite artistic passion projects. Behind the scenes, Wagner also quietly funded a mentorship program for emerging screenwriters and directors. Using a portion of his Fantasy Island profits, he established fellowships that provided stipends, script consultations, and small production grants. Confidential letters from protégés, later published in a commemorative volume, reveal Wagner's insistence on blending creative freedom with contractual literacy. He reminded each writer to read every clause, understand back-end points, and never relinquish creative credit. The program's alumni went on to produce award-winning short films and festival-selected features, a living legacy of Wagner's determination to share both his success and his hard-won contract wisdom. As the 1990s dawned, Wagner turned his attention back to the stage, producing a revival of the 1953 film adaptation The Young Lovers as a live theatrical spectacle. Profits from early-run syndication and cable licensing fully financed production costs, allowing him to hire top designers and directors. The show opened to sold-out houses in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and critics praised it as a masterclass in screen-to-stage adaptation. Wagner's hands-on direction and live performance reminded audiences of his versatility and underscored how television residuals could sustain ambitious theatrical work long after initial paychecks had faded. Meanwhile, Wagner's approach to real estate holdings evolved from headline-grabbing purchases to strategic, revenue-driving leases. He retained only a handful of Hollywood Hills and Beverly Hills properties, converting them into filming locations for television pilots and independent movies. Location fees from production companies provided a steady supplemental income, with no additional overhead for maintenance. This disciplined asset management created a dual revenue layer: public royalties from syndication paired with private earnings from property rentals. By balancing creative risk with financial prudence, Wagner ensured autonomy over his career choices at an age when many peers struggled to stay visible. Today, at 95, Robert Wagner's legacy is as much defined by his contractual innovations and financial foresight as by his on-screen charisma. The windfalls from Fantasy Island syndication funded his most daring projects, stage performances, independent films, and mentorship initiatives, while his real estate strategy guaranteed stability. Private archives hold the profit participation clauses and no cancellation guarantees that empowered him to protect storylines and preserve his creative autonomy. In the next section, we'll trace how Wagner's final acting roles reflect this enduring independence, explore the hidden vaults of unproduced scripts he championed in his twilight years, and reveal the cherished screenplay he penned as a gift for his grandchildren. Stay tuned to In his 10th decade. Wagner continued to defy expectations by accepting roles that mirrored his own journey, characters unspooling decades of memory, wisdom, and regret. At 92, he starred in The Last Patron, an indie drama shot on location at a crumbling Grand Hotel in New Orleans. He played a once-famous actor bent on saving the landmark from demolition, a performance suffused with rueful glances at deserted ballrooms and peeling wallpaper. One night in the lobby, he breaks character and recites lines from the old Fox contract he first signed in 1946. I may be bound to you for years, but I claim the right to choose my worth. On set, crew members describe how he'd slip out of costume between takes to study original contract pages he kept in a leather folio. That detail, an actor literally reading his own legal history, gave the film an eerie authenticity. Not all such projects reach the public eye. Behind closed doors, Wagner's private vault in his Pacific Palisades home housed dozens of unproduced scripts he championed in his final years. Many were screenplays by writers he mentored through his fellowship program. Stories about aging artists, cultural loss, and the pursuit of legacy. One script titled Silver Lining cast an elderly painter who stages a last gallery show on the roof of an abandoned factory. Another, called Echoes of Youth, featured a former stuntman teaching dance classes to at-risk teens. Wagner optioned these scripts at cost, covering writers' stipends and workshop expenses. He envisioned them as passion projects he might direct himself once his health allowed. Friends say he treated the vault like a sacred trust, each manuscript carefully dated, annotated by him with notes on pacing, dialogue, and moral stakes. In 2022, his last public-facing performance came in a cameo for a streaming anthology called Time Capsule. He portrayed an archivist discovered alive in a sealed bunker, cataloging decades-old film reels. The episode hinged on a brief exchange. A young archivist marvels at a 1955 screen test reel of Wagner, and he replies, "That boy had his whole life before him. I think he'd be pleased at what came next." In interviews, he said the line felt prophetic, a nod to both his storied past and the unexpected chapters still to come. Critics noted that even in 15 minutes on screen, his presence evoked a lifetime of industry change, silent movie gravitas edging into streaming-era nuance. Perhaps the most poignant creation of his later years was a personal screenplay he wrote as a gift for his grandchildren. Titled Stars in the Attic, it followed three siblings exploring their grandfather's attic and uncovering mementos: a wartime uniform, a spy gadget, a ring once loaned to Ingrid Bergman, each item triggering a short film sequence starring a younger Wagner. He crafted dialogue that spoke to themes of family, memory, and the inexorable passage of time. For Christmas 2023, he bound 20 copies in cloth covers, each inscribed, "For My Legacy Keepers." At the annual family gathering, he held a reading by lamplight, his voice steady even as he admitted tears in his eyes. Grandchildren later recalled how he closed the session by saying, "Your stories begin here." Despite his advanced age, he remained mentally sharp, reviewing every line of dialogue in rough cuts and offering editorial feedback. During post-production for his final indie feature, Overview, he insisted on a one-week color grading session so that the golden hues of twilight scenes matched his memories of Southern California sunsets from childhood. He argued that filmmakers too often sacrifice subtlety for spectacle, and he fought to preserve nuance, even arguing for a single cut of lingering on a doorway as the protagonist hesitates. That doorframe shot became a signature moment, cited by cinematographers as Wagner's door, in homage to his collaborative spirit. Off-camera, Wagner devoted his time to archiving as well. He partnered with the Academy Film Archive to donate personal scrapbooks, handwritten diaries, studio call sheets, annotated shooting scripts, and personal letters exchanged with icons like Gloria Swanson and Boris Karloff. The collection spans from an early telegram from Henry Fonda offering encouragement to a note from Alfred Hitchcock reading simply, "Bravo, Bob." Archive curators say reading those materials is like tracing Hollywood's evolution through the lens of one man's life. They plan to mount a traveling exhibition in 2025, curated around themes of agency, reinvention, and the unbreakable bond between art and commerce. In private moments, he reflected on the contracts, the series, the films, and the friendships that shaped him. A journal entry from July 2024 reads, 95 years of chords struck between risk and refuge. My legacy is neither trophy nor ledger, but the echoes that live on in story and in the hearts of those who carry them. And carrying them they will, through films that bear his indelible mark, through scripts that ignite new imaginations, and through family stories whispered at dinner tables long after the lights go down.